prospect with integrity, we will get customers who have integrity. Integrity is the foundation from which everything is built on.
You better understand value. But at the end of the day, sales is a relationship business. It is a people business. It is an emotional business.
This is Sales Logic.
This is Sales Logic, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to sell more effectively. Hanging out here with my partner, Mark Hunter. How you doing today, Mark?
I'm doing absolutely great. We got a great topic in tap. We're going to talk about when to coach, when to cut, handling underperforming salespeople. Oh, we've all had that experience. What do we do with that? We got a great book. We got a great, let me go ahead and tease the lightning round. Top 10 ways to become more disciplined. Ooh, that's worth sticking around for.
That's a good one.
Anyway.
All right. So topic today, I think this is really interesting of when do you know? In fact, I've been working a lot with clients this week about that, not all necessarily in sales, but how do you know when to keep somebody and how do you know when to let go of somebody? I think the very first question you ever need to ask yourself is, have I been clear about the expectations, what I really expect somebody to do? I read a statistic, Mark, that said 67% of disciplinary issues, 67% of the time we're frustrated with individuals. It is because they did not understand what is expected of them.
Well, that means much of the problem is with the manager, the supervisor, the leader, as it may be a problem with the person. This is the whole thing. If we're not clear on expectations, if we're not clear on goals, how we're going to measure what the performance standards are, how can we ever get upset at an employee who is not performing at that level that we want them to? That is absolutely key. And the easiest way to look at that is, how have other people that you've hired, how have other people, when they've come on board, have they struggled with the same issue? In other words, is this a clarity issue that you're not doing with all your people, or is this just a clarity issue with one person? Now, it could be either way, but you are so spot on when you say we first have to look at ourselves. It's easy for us to sit there and blame the person. We first have to look in a mirror and look at what have we done to set them up for either success or failure.
Yeah, I love what Hugh Hornsby is saying here. Love this topic. Coach them up or coach them out, but do it with love. I think the very first question you need to ask yourself when you've got an underperforming employee, I guess it's the second question, because I said the first one is, have you been clear? But the second question is, you've got to determine, do you have a skill issue or do you have a discipline issue? Are they struggling? Are they doing what you're asking them to do, but not getting results? Or are they not doing what you ask them? Because how you handle that and how you make that determination, completely different.
Well, and the discipline is a reflection of the attitude. I always say, hey, if somebody has a great attitude, I can give them the skills. I can give them the skills to do the job. But if they don't have the right attitude, I don't care if they got the right skills, because they're going to be poison. They're going to be toxic within the organization.
Yeah, great suggestion here. Mike Black joining us this morning. B 2.0 by Jim Collins has a great chapter on when to train and when to move on. Great suggestion. We'll make sure we get that in the show notes. But I think the other thing is, you always don't have to look at moving somebody out as a negative. I used this example with a client the other day. I actually got a sales job when I was 24 years old. And I had been recruited like crazy. They really thought they wanted me to come on board. And when I got there, I wasn't comfortable with what I was selling. I didn't believe in what I was selling. In other words, I was a values mismatch for the company. Now, with a values mismatch for the company, the kindest thing, I ended up quitting, but they should have let me go because I was never going to be successful there. I really believe people want to be and can be successful in life. Our job as leaders is to determine, do they have the desire to be successful with us?
Saying values, I go back to my first two sales jobs and I write about it in my book, A Mind for Sales. I got fired from both of them because in the first job, my values didn't line up with where the company was at. I was selling sides of beef to restaurants. Go figure on that one. That's a strange one. And I had no training. I didn't really want the job. The only reason I wanted the job was because of the company car. And so, hey, I had not only a bad attitude, except towards the car, B, I had no skill. There was no reason to expect me to be successful. And it wasn't until my third job that my boss sat me down and I really began to understand what sales is. And then I could begin to line my values up. And then you could say everything came out right. But here's the deal. It comes back to, you got to understand the mindset. You can't expect external actions of a salesperson to be different than what their internal mindset is thinking. So back to your thing, your values didn't line up. Attitude didn't line up. A lot of things. When that happens, it just is not going to be successful.
Yeah, I love that you had the same experience with your first sales job. But sometimes being fired is the best thing that can ever happen to you. I think another thing that you need to focus on is stop focusing on the result and focus really heavy on the behaviors. When somebody first starts working with you, one of the very important things that you need to define is how to be successful in your company. If any of you hired me or hired Mark right now, we're both phenomenal salespeople. But if you don't tell us the bullseye to aim for, we are going to fail. Why? Because we're selling as if we were selling in the last company. I'm bringing the same sales process, the same strategies, the same tactics, and the same target market. When I come to work for your company, you need to aim me in the right direction. In other words, you need to give me the formula of success. Who's the target market? Who's our top customer prospect list? How many sales calls do I need to make a week? How many follow-up calls? How many proposals do you expect me to write? How many proposals do you expect me to win on a weekly basis? How do I define, what is my good questioning to define whether somebody is in my prospect target market or whether they aren't? Like, you've got to give me the formula. And see, when I give somebody the formula, the behaviors, then as long as they're doing the behaviors, I understand where the behaviors are breaking down and maybe where they need more coaching or more support. If they're not doing the behaviors, and that happens a lot, like you'll hire salespeople and they're like, screw you, I'm going to do it the way I've always done it. I've been doing this for 30 years. Discipline issue, get them out of there. But you've got to define the difference. And if you're not giving them the formula, you don't understand where they're failing and how to help them.
Okay, there's a lot there for us to unpack, and it really comes down to several things. So many times managers will hire people, point them towards the goal, but they don't know how to get to the goal. This is the whole thing. Managers also are so guilty of, well, these are the steps we use. These are the processes we use. But they never communicate to make sure that they understand. You have got to coach them. Coaching means you've got to have them playing it back to you. And this is so dangerous because managers don't do that. They tell their people what to do and they expect them to do it. So many times what happens is we hire people, we hire people and we think they can do it, because this comes back to something else that you said. We'll hire a person who brings in their own habits, their own philosophy, their own way of doing things. Ooh, bad approach. Because what does that do? That says, like, what, if somebody were to hire me, I'd come in and I'd do exactly the playbook that I did. That's maybe not the playbook you want. It goes back to, do I hire new people or people who have experience? That's a $64,000 question. Upside on both ways.
Yeah, I think you can hire either. You just have to be, there are non-negotiables when you go to work for somebody. And one of the non-negotiables, I love what Roberta and Mike are saying here. They're really wondering if companies have that level of clarity. Look, if you cannot hand the recipe of how a salesperson can be successful in your company, don't hire a salesperson. You're not ready yet. You haven't figured it out. One of the biggest reasons that I sell in my own company is to stay on top of what's successful so that I can guide my salesperson as to what's working or what it's working. Now, to tell you the truth, my salesperson is better than I am at selling, but if I had to guide her, that would be how I do it. I like to really granularly understand. I see this happen all the time. Typically, when I come into a company and I'm helping the sales team, the very first question I ask is, what is the recipe for success? Who's adhering to it and who isn't? And to Mike and Roberta's question, most of them are not adhering to it. They don't have a clue. They don't have a clue at all.
That goes back to Adane's question, which is up there. What's one thing you wish you knew about sales when you were starting out? This is something managers need to do. You need to line your new person up with an experienced person and let them work together. Here's the whole thing. We learn from experiencing others, and many times two things happen. A, the person you line them up with actually increases their skills because they're excited to be able to help train and develop the new person. And the new person is able to learn from an experienced person, and it takes things off your plate. However, you as a coach, you as a leader, don't think that you can check that. Okay, I got that one done. I can move on to something else. You still got to monitor. You still got to stay in the game, because you may delegate, but you do not abdicate. This is so critical with anybody you hire in terms of when to coach, when to cut. So many times I see managers, they hire somebody, they show them the playbook and go do it. And they never come back to check on them until they check on their results. Hold it. What are the activities? Go back to what Mira said earlier. What are the number of calls you got to make? What are the number of follow-ups you got to make? You got to coach them through it. And you know what? Many times the manager doesn't know how to do it. The manager does not know how to do it. And that's a real problem. That's why if you are in that case, I'm not going to throw you under the bus. You've got to line that new hire up with another person who has experience and let them kind of role play and ride together to learn the job.
Yeah, the question of what are the biggest thing that I wish I'd known when I got into sales. I wish I'd known how important behaviors and daily activity. I wish I'd known how critically important consistency is in sales. We're talking a lot about people today who have a sales team and when to hire and when to let go. But this is for you. I mean, I track my behaviors on a weekly basis. In fact, I was just working on my numbers this morning. I turned my numbers into my team. My team holds me accountable for how many sales calls I make a month, how many proposals I write, I track how many proposals I win and how many I lose. And the reason I track how many I lose is because if I'm not losing a couple, I'm not pricing stuff high enough. So my goal is to lose two a month. But I track them in because I can see when all of a sudden my behaviors are not working anymore and I have to do some adjustment in my own strategy. So I'm sort of like my own boss holding myself accountable, and I step in and coach myself when I need to step in and coach myself. But I wouldn't be able to do that if I wasn't tracking what I was doing.
That brings up a question that I loved asking people when I was leading a sales team. I'd ask them, hey, what are the things that you measure in your job, in your role, to determine if you're successful? And what's interesting is if I get a blank stare back from a salesperson, I know I've got an issue. If I got a whole detailed report back that was, I count the number of screws or I count the number of miles, hold it. Are you doing the right? But it was a really good question to ask because it helped me understand the mindset of where my salesperson was coming from. And that's absolutely key, because here's the whole thing. You've got to get them on the same set of metrics. Mayor, you have your set of metrics. I have my set of metrics. And you're right. I share them with my team and they challenge me on it. They push back. See, this is the whole thing. Success when you're coaching, when to cut and so forth. Got to ask yourself, is this person willing to be held accountable? If they're not willing to be held accountable, you have a lone wolf. That was a sales strategy that worked in the 60s, but it doesn't work today. You cannot afford to have lone wolves out there. Accountability is absolutely key, which means also on your part, you are accountable to your person, to your salespeople, to be helping to develop them and bring them up to a higher level.
Yeah, I love what Dave Sanderson is saying here, that Mark is so right. You need to have a mentor. When he was new with ADP, he didn't have a mentor, but he found a top salesperson out of New York City and follow him and asked him what he did to be the top salesperson. So absolutely true. But, in my opinion, you let a salesperson go when they're not following the behaviors that you've asked them to do. Now, at times, you'll get salespeople who do the behaviors, you coach them, and they just can't make the switch. And at that point, you need to find them another position in the company. But until you have given people the roadmap, until you have tracked their behaviors, until you have tried to coach them in areas where they're struggling, you're not in a position to really know whether that person is doing what they need to do in order to be successful. I'll give you a quick example. A million years ago, I had a boss who was coaching us all on how to make outbound sales calls. And we had to make X amount of outbound sales calls a day, and then we had to close X amount of deals a month. And one of my team members was really struggling. She was so diligent. She made her calls every single day, and she could not close a deal. She was so terrified she was going to get fired because this was a huge mandate coming down from corporate. But our boss was phenomenal. And he just took her aside. He said, you know what? You do your behaviors every month. I'm not sure what's missing, but I want to listen to you make a phone call, and then I'm going to make a phone call, and then we're going to make a phone call together. And that very day she closed a deal. It wasn't that she wasn't doing what she was supposed to do. There was something off in how she was doing it. And because he would have fired her if she just wasn't making the calls, but she was making the calls, which told him that she was making the effort, but something was wrong in the effort.
There's so much, again, there you can, I want to come back to this whole thing. When is it time to fire somebody? When is it time to turn somebody loose? First of all, you got to understand, have you given them enough skill set, training, enough opportunities to be successful? But here's the thing. Don't sit there and hang on to them forever. The question we got from a listener this week is, how do you grow a sales team when ownership struggles to let go of underperformers? And that's what we need to talk about here real quick, because, the employees were never fully trained. Sales is their only revenue stream, and the owners hesitate to make tough calls. You can't hesitate to cut somebody loose. Here's what I've found. I found this from my own personal walk, being fired a couple times. Things always turn out better. I am amazed at the number of people who I've had to let go over the years. And almost universally, they wind up going and achieving success somewhere else. And everybody's happy. Don't hesitate at all. Don't feel that terminating somebody is the end of the world. If you need to cut them loose, because here's the whole thing. If you don't cut them loose, your people are watching you. Your people are looking at you. Hey, you're letting this slacker by. That's what's happening to this listener question this week, where unfortunately, the organization is never going to perform because management ownership doesn't want to let people go. We got a problem, folks. You're never going to attract top talent unless you're willing to weed out lower level talent.
And with this question, let's talk about how we can help you. Let's talk about, you're between a rock and a hard place. You're not the owner, and you've got owners who won't hold people accountable. Not unusual, okay? I work with companies all the time that there's a lack of accountability. Here's a couple of things I think that you can do. Number one, do not let this impact your performance. Whether you spend this career with your company or you move on to somebody else, never, ever, ever let a negative environment impact your performance. The other is empathize and understand where the owners are coming from. They want performance. They want results. They just fear confrontation and accountability. Lots of people do. So go to them with an idea and a plan. Say, I've been thinking about this. I know that we're in a tough environment, and I know you want to drive sales. Here's how I think we could do it. I've kind of written a roadmap as to what's made me successful. I thought maybe we could talk to the team about what's working, what isn't working, what are some things that we could do differently. Take a coach position to the owners and try to help them get out of a pain point that they're in. They want to hold people accountable. Most people don't like to do it because they see it as a negative. And so kind of help them get over that and give that a try and see if that works. But get them to say, really focus on the fact that you know how to make the team successful. And maybe you guys could work and come up with a plan. If everybody did the same things, maybe the company would move forward.
See, you're allowing them to make the decision. There's something else about coaching. Coaching is done in private. Coaching is done in a safe, secure environment, because the key with coaching is you got to get the response. You got to get them to open up with you, which means they have to trust you. So if they're not in a safe, secure environment when you're coaching them, you're never going to get the results, because what you're going to get is a bunch of noise. I love Andy's question. If someone is not producing, I ask them, What are the internal obstacles? Spot on. That's right. Ask them. But again, they're not going to share that if you're in a public setting in a sales meeting. It's got to be one-on-one, which means you as a manager have to be willing to spend time with people one-on-one. I want to go back to something about when is it time to terminate somebody. If somebody's shocked that they're being terminated, that's a failure on your part. That's a failure on your part as a manager, because you failed to give them the guidance and the understanding to help them realize that they aren't performing up to standards. That is absolutely. Hey, Jack Hubbard's jumped in. Part of the problem is how companies measure. Lag measures are not coachable. Spot on. Lead measures like the ratio of phone calls to appointments are coachable. That's so spot on. Because so many times what happens is we measure things that happened in the past. Okay, now those are indicators. I get it. But that's why I hate the annual review. Well, let's go back and look at what you did 10, 12 months ago. Hey, can we deal with what we're talking about today and how we're going to move forward? You've got to be looking at measures, activities that are happening today and the results that they're going to achieve. It comes down to accountability. If there's not a level of accountability with the person you're coaching and with you, it's never going to be successful.
Yeah, I love, you said this so much better than I did. Be proactive and take the solution to your manager. I want to pop in here too that Roberta said psychology research tells us that holding people to boundaries helps them feel safe. I believe that 100%. It is the kindest thing you can do. You know, when we were all kids, you all wanted to party at the parents' house that would let you drink and would let you smoke. Then you go to your high school reunion and you find out all that kid wanted to live in our houses where there was heavy accountability and boundaries set. Good question here, Mark. As a new director of sales coming in where there was no process currently in place, how do you make that work? I'm doing what I can know and tweaking what I think needs to be done, trying to change direction, but I want the team and the company to be successful.
Oh, great question. Start out by asking yourself, what are the 3 or 4 activities that have got to get done that are going to yield the best results? Just focus on that. Don't try to create 50,000 steps, 50,000 process. Just take those 3 or 4 things. Just focus on that. Set goals that you know your people can achieve. Goals to the activities. In other words, number of phone calls to make, appointments set, whatever. Achieve it. And set up very accountable standards in 2-hour blocks or 4-hour blocks. In other words, and I always say, get the morning off right. Get the morning off right. And just begin to build. Rome was not built in a day. It takes one step at a time. Start small and build your way. But your people have to know that you're in the trenches with them. If they don't see you in the trenches with them, doing it, participating, helping them, doing and holding yourself accountable, they're not going to do it. You want to create a winning team? It starts with you.
Yeah, Robin, if I were sitting in your shoes and I was a brand new sales director and I had to take that team to the next level, the very first thing I would do is I would call a team meeting and I would say, here's our goal. Our goal is a non-negotiable, but that's the only part of this that is a non-negotiable. We can get there any way we want to get there. So let's work together and let's write the roadmap on how to achieve that goal. Because the thing is, a new sales director, or even as a sales director, if you drive it top down, they're going to resist it. They're not going to do it. But when you give them the ownership and the ability to create it with you, now you may need to go back and do some tweaking with it. They may not push themselves hard enough, but at least it gets them engaged at the start. Mark, we probably better get to the book and the lightning round, right?
We have had so many questions popping up over here. We can't get them all on the screen. Apologize, but great conversation. Hey, the book is written by you, Meridith Elliott Powell, Mentally Fit. Tell the audience about the book.
Yeah, so this Mentally Fit, Powerfully Resilient, and Competitively Strong is basically a book of what you need to do to persevere when the obstacles are in front of you, when they seem insurmountable, and everything that you need to do to push through goals and exceed results.
So I think it's a book everybody needs to be buying, reading, and learning from right now. Lightning round, top 10 ways to get more disciplined. Go.
Number 1 is that you need to have a mindset around it. You need to start every day really intentionally.
2, you need to be willing to be held accountable by somebody else. Somebody has to help hold you accountable.
Yeah, if you want to be more disciplined, you need to define what are the most important things that you need to do every day, and get those scheduled first.
Number 4, you have to be accountable to yourself. You set your schedule and you stick to it.
Yeah, I would say that number 5 is you really need to, if you want to be more disciplined, you need to, like, for lack of a better way to do it, adopt that Mel Robbins 5-minute rule. Like, don't give yourself, take action instead of thinking about it or procrastinating it. I think about the way that this morning I really didn't have time to meditate, but I just stopped everything I was doing and I did it. Like, you've got to just decide these things are going to be done no matter what.
Number 6, in the words of Brian Tracy, eat the frog. Do that most difficult thing first thing in the morning. And it's amazing at how it will create more discipline in your life.
Yeah. Number 9 from Mark Hunter's favorite book, Atomic Habits, stack your habits. Let your habits really stack one on top of another.
Number 10, always be reviewing yourself, asking yourself, where can I excel? Where can I do better? In other words, what you have to do, you got to review your week, review your day, not to flog yourself, but to say, what are those little tweaks? What are those little things? Because a slight tweak made every day comes right out of the book, Atomic Habits. It's amazing at how you'll be more successful. Hey, with that, we want to say thank you for listening to Sales Logic this week. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. Something we've said has earned you a single dollar. Consider telling a friend about our show, because it's how we grow when we help you grow. I'm Mark Hunter.
And I'm Meridith Elliott, Powell.
Remember, when you sell with confidence and integrity,
all of this uncertainty suddenly becomes your competitive advantage.
Hey, jump out to the website, saleslogicpodcast.com. Go up there at the top. You're going to see Sales Logic Expert Exchange. Get registered for our monthly events. Coming up this month, Mike Weinberg. We have a special guest every month going one-on-one with you, the audience. This is going to be such a good session. I mean, you really need to. Mike is freaking brilliant, and this is going to be such an awesome sales expert exchange. But until then, go out, hold yourself accountable, hold your team accountable. We'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Sales Logic.